You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we will be reviewing the action from the first T20 between India and England. I mean, England, it's fair to say, absolutely romped to victory in this match. And to go over everything, joining me, Jack Hope, is Ross Legg. How are you doing, Ross?
Feeling pretty smug over here, mate. Pretty smug. And we might well have just lost about 3,000 listeners, but never mind.
To give us the India perspective, appearing for the first time on the podcast is Ashwin Garg. How are you doing, Ashwin?
I am, I've had better days. I was just thinking about how you invited us to come, or one of us from Edges and Sledges to come on and guest on your show at every point during the test series. It would have been a much more fun time to come on after the second test, the third test, or the fourth test. But of course, today's the day I chose to come on. But anyway, thanks for having me on the show. Not the greatest of days, but we have 4 more T20s. We'll bounce back. We'll be okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry it had to be today. Although I'm also not sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's like batting, isn't it, Ashwin? Timing is everything.
Absolutely, and my timing has been horrendous, but that's okay. Like I said, India has a good track record, I think, in the last few Test series and T20 series we've played, where we lose the first match and come back. So I'm going to assume Captain Kohli did this on purpose, just to give us fans a reason to bitch and moan for the next few days, and then feel excited when we come back. Let's hope that.
Ross, before we get into the show, can you give a few messages to our listeners quickly?
Yep, everyone should follow us on our social media accounts at The Cricket Pod. So that's on Twitter and Instagram. And if you're following us on YouTube, you should like and subscribe. And if it's on podcast platforms, follow us and leave us a review. If we get some good reviews, we will read them out. Funnier, the better.
Great. And then to follow that up, Ross, can you recap the T20 for us quickly?
Oh, yeah, I've written a nice little thing here, I reckon. 2 white ball powerhouses facing off against one another with an abundance of talent on display did not disappoint, as we saw one of the best T20 performances from England, who outplayed India in every single aspect of the game. India struggled to get going and failed to find any momentum, as they found themselves 48 for 4 off of 10 overs due to disciplined bowling and a strong fielding performance by England. It was only because of Shreyas Iyer that India got to a well below par, 125, and then England came out to face the Axar Patel music. But Jason Roy and Josh Buttler waltzed their way to a 72 opening stand with a combination of finesse and brawn before Chahal removed Buttler with a straight delivery. Buttler, for some reason, decided to block it out in the 7th over, as I said. And England then cruised to an 8-wicket win with Milan and Bairstow in complete control. 1-0 in the series. Ashwin, as you said, it really does tee up a tasty response from India in the next kind of couple of games.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happened to the Test series too, right? We didn't expect to lose the one, I'd say, in the Test series. Look, England's a world-class side, right? They're the number 1 T20 side. They're currently ODI World Cup champions. My prediction for this series was I hope it doesn't come down to boundary count again, because you've already won one of those. But, this was never going to be an easy start to the series for India. We're going to talk through strategies, but it's just incredible to see how Owen Morgan brings a completely fresh perspective, in addition to, fresh legs, fresh blood. Just his perspective and his captaincy is just magnificent on the field. So it was great to see in action today. As a non-Indian fan, it was probably great to see. It was frustrating for us, but it's just outstanding from the perspective of cricket that Owen Morgan brings so much smart thinking to the game.
Yeah, I think it was an exciting T20 performance from England. If you are interested in watching the very best, I think. Actually, I'm going to go to you first, sort of on this question, and I think you might have already hinted at what your answer your answer will be. Was it just great bowling from England here, or was there an element of dreadful batting from India too?
I mean, it's a combination of everything. First, if I was Michael Vaughan, I'd like to be criticizing the pitch. I think the pitch was unfit to play on. England only won because of the pitch. India would have done better in a better pitch. That's a joke for another day. We spent, I think, a full episode on our show talking about the pitch and the pundits who thought the pitch was the only reason to blame for the Test series. But England bowled well, right? I don't think they bowled the best I've ever seen them bowl. I don't think they bowled the best spells I've ever seen any T20 side bowl. But in combination with the poor batting approach, it was obviously enough to restrict India to 124. I think I think there's a much broader strategic question. And again, for anybody who's listened to Edges and Sledges, they've heard us harp on about this over and over. India plays an ODI side in T20s and just hopes they adjust, right? On paper, Shikhar Dhawan, KL Rahul, Virat Kohli at 3, Shreyas Iyer normally at 4. That is a world-class top 4 for an ODI match. No questions asked. Are they the best top 4 for T20s? I think most people would argue they're not. So for some reason, okay, they rested Rohit Sharma. You bring him back in. He's probably one of the best openers in the world right now, if not the best. Still not the strategic kind of progress we should have made from a T20 planning standpoint. So I'll stop there. I could talk about it all episode, but I think bad application of the batting, but also bad choices. I don't think you can open with Dhawan and Rahul and have Kohli coming 1 down, because that's too many guys in the side to stabilize. And yes, they didn't today, but it puts undue pressure on everybody else when you have the wrong selection.
I actually think I wanted to go somewhere else first, but that's a really good point, because Kohli earlier this week, he was doing a lot of talking about how India were going to play with a lot of freedom. And he actually said, I've got the quote down here, the players we have added to the squad are precisely to give our team more batting depth and not play in a similar kind of pattern we have played in the past. We want to be a side that plays free cricket, not having any baggage of lack of depth or one guy having to bat too long, enough to make sure that we get a big total. And I thought from that, having predicted sort of 4-1 to England, I thought that, oh no, India are actually going to play like Ishan Kishan and Sky, and Pant's going to be batting. We did bat in the top 4, but I thought they'd really stack their team. And what we were actually left with was their best boundary hitting opener on the bench in Rohit Sharma, 4 anchor batters in the top 4, which is as defensive as you can be, really. It was a really, really defensive selection from India. And then also this kind of psychological pressure that Kohli had put on these guys to bat in a completely different way. And as you say, Ashwin, instead of utilizing their prodigious talent when it comes to sort of playing that anchor role, they all had to kind of bat differently. And I think the person who demonstrated that pressure had got to the top 4 most obviously was Kohli himself, with that really weird shot and a 5-ball duck to kind of throw his wicket away a bit, Ross. I mean, I know in our WhatsApp you found that kind of funny. Do you want to sort of talk us through the wicket, Ross, and what you made of Kohli's performance?
Well, I just think that in the preview we talked a hell of a lot about India's kind of approach to T20, and I completely agree with both of your points on that. And we had like tens, if not hundreds, of comments telling us Kohli's batting average. 300.
Yeah. Just the batting average. Yeah.
Just the batting average. KL Rahul's batting average, and it's that attitude which almost hinders India. You've got the IPL, which is just fantastic to watch. You see some unbelievably great hitting from the likes of Ishan Kishan, and the average is not the best or not the optimal metric to use for elite T20 players or elite T20 teams. You need to be looking at your strike rates. You need to be looking at your boundary percentage. And I think with Kohli's innings, there's almost always so much pressure on him anyway. He is a god amongst men when it comes to being unbelievably talented. He's going through a bit of a rough patch with the bat anyway. And there is, as you say, Ashwin, there is that pressure around kind of that batting lineup. His dismissal to Adil Rashid, and Adil Rashid has got him out before and has surprised him. On this occasion, it was just, I think it was almost a Sunday cricket kind of shot. It was a pretty rank ball from Rashid, really. It was a bit of a long hop that you kind of thought he's going to rock back and just cut that away or put it away. And he's hit it straight to wide mid on to Chris Jordan's hands. And I think everybody was pretty shocked at it, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, I can't remember the last time I saw him take 2 steps outside leg stump. I mean, that's a tail ender shot. I love Kohli. I think the world of him, but that's the kind of shot I hit on Sunday cricket, right? Like I'm a terrible cricketer myself. I can just talk about the game, but yeah, you take 2 steps out to the leg side and just hoik at it, and it just goes straight to the fielder. And you almost saw him look at himself saying, "What am I doing? Why am I here? Why did I hit that shot?" And so that's where it gets challenging. And again, we could spend all day strategizing, but I think if he's playing at 3, you have to build the rest of the team around him. And I think he still is India's best number 3. He's just that talented that he can be that in all formats. But you have to then choose your openers, numbers 4, 5, and 6 accordingly. He's chosen each player who's individually good in the position that they play, but combined, the squad just didn't make any sense. And it happened, right? What Dhawan was 4 of 12, Rahul was 1 of 4. So of course Kohli felt the pressure, and he went for the stupid shot, and it didn't work today.
I think it's sort of a case of picking 4 Kohlis in the top 4, but Kohli is the best of the Kohlis. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's well articulated. Yeah.
I don't want to take too much agency away from England here, because I think we've covered the problems with the India lineup there, and why that approach led to pressure, and why that led to the wickets that we saw. But England did bowl well, didn't they, Ross? I mean, in terms of just as a bit of context going into this, England actually had the worst statistics in terms of how many wickets they take and how many runs they concede in the power play of the major international cricketing nations. One, they bowled well, and tell us about that. And 2, do you think their performance today puts to bed those concerns?
So I think it was really interesting. You've seen with Morgan kind of, I think it was mentioned on the commentary, around moving kind of Adil Rashid's role in the sides. They kind of experimented with in the middle, and you see like he's probably one of the best, if not the best, ODI spinner in that role. And they were trying to figure out when he's going to be most effective in T20 cricket. There was an awful plan when he bowled in the last over against Australia and lost us the game. But here opening up, it was almost a surprise to everybody, right? They picked Mark Wood, Jofra Archer, Sam Curran, all who typically could open with the new ball. And Sam Curran has been kind of touted as that, he's going to be just as good as David Willey, even though David Willey is still playing cricket at pretty decent standards. But what I really liked was that Jofra is just Jofra. There was, again, talk about pressure around someone. The guy receives all kinds of abuse online. There's always stuff written about him in the media about being, he's just a bit lackadaisical in tests. T20, he is elite, and he showed today how much of a superstar he actually is. Combining him with Adil Rashid is a great plan, and it worked in this game. I'm not sure on the sustainability of some of that. Bowling in the power play as a spinner is difficult, and it is a properly difficult skill set. Adil Rashid got to have another over in there because the other ones went so well with him and Jofra. So it'll be quite interesting to see that. It was also strange in terms of the T20 bowling strategy. I think we'll come on to it a little bit later. But Adil Rashid only bowled 3 overs out of the 20. And as the T20 kind of strategy goes, you see your spinners bowling. So it is a bit strange that, but I think it was nailed to a T.
I hadn't even noticed that. So that's a really interesting point. What I thought was particularly interesting, actually, is that normally in T20s, and we've all heard this narrative, or you've read, hold on, the Freddie Wilde's Cricket 2.0, where
we've not even got any sponsorship, mate. You're giving out free stuff like that? Unbelievable.
Where he will talk about, and other strategists will talk about, how having spinners in your side to control the run rate in the middle overs is kind of the optimum strategy for T20 cricket. That wasn't what happened today, was it, Ashwin? Were you surprised to see England go with such a seam-heavy approach?
I was, and that's part of why, I guess, when it works, part of why I opened by saying Owen Morgan is just a tactical genius, right? He figured it out. It worked. I don't think it's long-term sustainable for, let's say, the World Cup in India for him to not have a second spinner. But I mean, and we know he's there. We know Moeen is good. He's a quality player. He's going to play the IPL. He has the ability to show up and just slide into that second spinner spot when you need him. I think what was really interesting to watch today is Jofra is obviously world class. He's a great opening bowler. Mark Wood, I mean, I think one of the commentators said it, but it just continues to remind you out and out pace will always be an asset in T20 cricket, right? And so in the IPL, I and both my co-podcasters, DJ and Varun, are fans of the Delhi Capitals. And, before last season, our opening bowler, our 2 quick bowlers are Kagiso Rabada and Anrik Nokia, the 2 South African quicks. And through the season, we just realized, just that 149, 150 kilometer an hour consistent is going to give a batsman trouble. Is somebody going to edge it for 6? Of course, it's going to happen, right? But Mark Wood was the revelation for me. I knew Archer's good. Sam Curran had a decent day as well. But just that in the kind of late power play into the middle overs, to have a quick bowler who can just get that little bit of extra bounce and that little bit of extra pace was a huge asset today. So great bowling by the Indian team, by the English team. I wish I could say the same for India. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that shift might be a little bit more long term. If I'm honest, I think there's a couple of things that I've heard in cricket media recently that suggest that this is a thought process that comes from Nathan Lehman. So Nathan Lehman, if you don't know, is one of the founders of CricViz, and he is also England's team analyst. What they've been talking about on CricViz is this idea of a middle over enforcer. Somebody who comes in the middle overs, bowls really hard into the pitch, and kind of confuses batters a little bit, because it's not the time in the game when you can necessarily swing at that ball and risk top edging it up in the air. So you have to think about other scoring options, and that messes with the rhythm of a T20 and suppresses the run rate, basically. So I think that might be the direction England go. It will be interesting either way, and I think both the points you've made about how England having a second spinner, particularly with a view to a World Cup in India, would probably be useful, are correct.
Jack, do you think it's because England don't have that dearth of spinning talent? So, I mean, we in the T20 Blast, for example, there are some good players within there, like the likes of Danny Briggs. I think he's a reserve player. But Adil Rashid and Matt Parkinson and Moeen Ali are the three on this kind of leg of the tour, compared to the 6 out-and-out, 7 out-and-out pace bowlers that are considered to be pretty damn good. Is that why they go there? Are England just going, we've got great pace bowlers, we're going to have to use that talent?
So partly that. I mean, obviously you have to work with the resources you have. So I think that's partly true. But England, I think, do rate people like I think Liam Dawson's probably the next spinner, and they do rate Moeen Ali, and they've shown faith certainly in Moeen. I think it might be a kind of subverting the narrative kind of play, in that a lot of T20 sides now, knowing that they're going to face a lot of spin in the middle overs, put 2 or 3 guys in there who really can put the spinners away. If they're suddenly facing 4 overs of Mark Wood between sort of, over 5 and over 12, because he doesn't bowl too much, he doesn't bowl a lot of death stuff. That's really messing with your strategy a little bit. Arguably, it leaves you open to situations where that becomes a little bit one-dimensional if the pitch is slow, or you get an opener that's sort of teeing off. But it worked really well today, didn't it? And like, as we got a comment in from somebody who maybe hadn't seen that much of England recently, Mark Wood was bowling 8 kilometres an hour faster than Jofra average on average today. That's pretty scary. Where do we want to move on to next? We want to talk a little bit of England strategy, because they've got quite a unique approach to the game, I think, in world cricket, Ross.
Yeah, I think there's one thing we do have to mention first and foremost, and that is probably the most outrageous cricket shot I have seen this year. Actually, I'll say this year, since he did the same thing to Jimmy Anderson in the Test.
I was going to say, he's just done it to Anderson. He's doing it to Archer as well. So
I've got already done it. If you were to have a trademark cricket shot, Rishabh Pant is so on brand in saying, the reverse paddle? Whatever what you'd call it, the reverse lap over the slips off of an 80-odd mile an hour delivery. Just a bit like, that takes some serious balls and some serious talent to do that.
I mean, 100% does, right? It also shows form, right? Form matters, right? He's seeing the ball bigger than anybody else. And he backs himself, and he's going to do it again, and he's going to get out. And we have to be okay with that, because I think what England has embraced is being okay or comfortable with getting, in Test cricket at least as well, but how many under triple digit scores as England has in the last few years? There's been much more than they were previously, right? And same thing, even in T20s and ODIs, there are collapses. When you have a batting lineup that is as explosive and has the firepower that England has, there's going to be a day they all fail.
Yeah, it can implode too. Like, it does work both ways.
Yeah, I don't think India's going to pick 6 Rishabh Pants in the batting order, but you got to have 2 to 3 to give you that ability to bat your way out of a tough spot.
Yeah, I think that trust is so important. And you saw England were there 15 years ago with Kevin Peterson came on the thing. Remember when he used to do the switch hit and get out, and people are like, why the hell are you doing that? And yet the guy is also one of the leading run scorers of all time, one of the best T20 players of all time. So I can see you completely agree with that trust element, Ashwin.
Ross, I'm going to ask you a question, and because I think I maybe disagree with Ashwin's point about only having 3 Rishabh Pants if they're available to your lineup. I would argue that I would argue that England go for more or less a whole top order of maybe they're not as talented as Rishabh Pant, but
Mm.
they play in that way. Would you agree with that point or not?
I think when it comes to T20, it is a completely different sport to ODI and completely different sport to Test matches, and that's where I think the fans sometimes don't really understand that. And 100 is going to be much closer to T20 cricket, obviously. I think when it comes to the ability to hit runs, we saw it in the IPL. The commentators started talking about, Kohli and de Villiers rotating the strike for RCB in the middle overs, and that's the right way to play cricket. It's the wrong way to play T20 cricket. You need to be hitting and finding the boundaries more times than you're not. And I think having a lineup of Rishabh Pants would, one, be brilliant. Two, you probably want a right-handed Rishabh Pant in there as well. But I think the anchor role, I think you only have the luxury of having one anchor role. It's just great that India have the most luxurious player of them all in Virat Kohli. And he's going to be the best anchor available. But around that, I agree with Ashwin's earlier point around you should build that side around it. You should have Ishan Kishan, have Rohit Sharma, have the most explosive players around that to ensure that even if he gets out, who else we got coming in? Hardik Pandya. He's got a strike rate of like 170 against pace bowling. Brilliant.
Yeah. I just to illustrate how I think England think differently about this compared to other teams. Do you remember when Dawid Malan got dropped from the England side, and the kind of jokey story about all of that was that he didn't run off the last ball of a T20, and that meant that he basically that meant that Morgan didn't want him in the side, and so they dropped him. Now the real reason for that is actually that Dawid Malan's got a little bit of a reputation for being a slow starter, and England didn't think that they could fit a guy who might be 10 off 10 balls into the way they wanted to play cricket. And I think, that way of thinking has to be the model for other teams, no?
Yeah, when you look at Milan, today was really important for Milan because he was, I think it was 18 off 18 or 17 off 18. Unfortunately, he ended up not out and hit a 6 on the last ball. So no one's going to be saying, you've got your bad strike rate. But if you look at England's look at England's batting lineup all the way down. I mean, even Sam Curran hits a long ball now, and he's batting 7 or 8. Jofra Archer's proved that he could smash people out of Abu Dhabi like he did in the IPL. So I think it's a pretty formidable lineup, and I think India probably need to change their approach for the next four matches. And England could well do them a favour for the World Cup, as we said in the preview.
I did think that. Just before we move on to what India will do then, because I think that's where the big question is, because there's not really much you can say about a perfect cricketing performance, is there, other than England bowled really well, and that was good. Do you remember, like, 2 or 3 shows ago when we talked about England's Test team and how kind of a lack of diversity in terms of background limited what they were capable of, in that when England's batting fails in Test cricket, all of them tend to fail because there's not really anyone in the team who thinks slightly differently or has had a different cricketing upbringing compared to the rest of the side. And that kind of culminated in a situation, didn't it, for the 4th Test, where England looked kind of exactly like they were, which was like 11 white dudes who'd taken a wrong turn in India and didn't know how to get out of the situation that they found themselves in. Now, if you contrast that, I think you can contrast that really well with this white ball team, in that you have Adil Rashid, you have Jofra Archer, you have Sam Curran from Zimbabwe and Roy from South Africa, and the captain's Irish. And then you've got Chris Jordan and Mark Wood from lots of different backgrounds. I think when you fit a team with that many different ways of doing things into a coherent strategy, that team can be really good if they're good at cricket. And this team are really good at cricket. And I think it might be quite hard, for India to bounce back, particularly when you contrast their approach to sort of this game, at least. Ashwin, they will surely make some changes coming up.
Yeah, they have to. I think the question I almost have for you both is, as England fans, how does it feel to see the shift in prioritization of the shorter format versus the longer format? And arguably, part of why India is weaker. I mean, your best T20 batsman today is Rohit Sharma. Your best T20 bowler today is Jasprit Bumrah. They're both not playing. Bumrah's off getting married. Congratulations to him. But he played the first couple of tests, right? there's a priority. He's making the priority call to be there for Test cricket, and it's okay to skip T20 Is. He wants to be there for the IPL. So England seems to have made the opposite call, right? The whole rotation policy was discussed at length. Everybody's been talking about it, but it doesn't feel like they always fielded their best 11 in tests. But they, to your point, Jack, have fielded their best, most diverse, smartest thinking 11 in T20s. So I don't know whether India is going to prioritize T20 internationals that same way. Virat has said he wants to be the number one Test side, and hey, we're in the World Test Championship final, right? So I think there's a choice that the board and the skippers have made, but I don't know how you guys think about that.
Do you want to answer that one, Ross?
Yeah, so I think from an Indian kind of standpoint, kind of the outsider's view of the Indian team, I think they have the players to position themselves to fight on both fronts. That is the bit for me. Like, we've already spoken about their selection strategy and their approach to T20 cricket. I think they have the opportunity and the talent to do both, and are not kind of constructive criticism, if you like, in the preview and on this show is not because we think India are bad. India are clearly a world-class cricket nation with unbelievable talent. They just need to use it in the right way. And I think you mentioned at the start of the show, Ashwin, around kind of that trust and the environment that you operate in. Any player who comes into the white ball setup for England has to be unbelievably good. Like you look at even Sam Billings is kind of on the outside. He's considered a really, really good player. Liam Livingstone has been class around the world. Alex Hales doesn't even get a look into the side for one reason or another. But there is a bit there where any player going into that has a certain level of trust. And just look at Jason Roy. Jason Roy had a bit of a torrid time over the last kind of 12, 18 months with England in terms of form and not really hitting any runs since the World Cup. And today, the faith was repaid in Morgan and in the England selectors with a pretty brutal performance that probably won England the game.
Yeah, I'd probably add a couple of points to that. So firstly, on the idea of trust, I think England, when it comes to batting in white ball cricket, and most obviously in T20 cricket, subvert what they want. Subversion is obviously my word of the day today, but they subvert what they want from their players. So most in cricket, you'll hear fans and you'll hear captains and you'll hear players actually talk quite regularly about batting mistakes, and they'll say things like, "Why did he do that?" And that is basically the word "that" is replacing risk his wicket in that sentence. Now, I think England don't think about it from that perspective. I think their question is, in a sense, why didn't he do that? Why aren't you batting in a way that does risk your wicket? And I think they've created an environment where you can play that way because they will back you if they think you're good enough. See Jason Roy over the last year. To answer the sort of rotation point, I think that's quite tricky because I think England probably did the right thing but got the process wrong. I think they probably underestimated how big the series was, if that makes sense, the Test series in India. And it was. I mean, it was the biggest thing that's happened probably in UK sport in the last month. And that it's not often that cricket hits that kind of height. And it has. People have been talking about it. It's been like in the news. It was on terrestrial TV as well. So it had a little bit more of a following. And I think they probably regret some of the decisions around who was there for that series and who was there for the Sri Lanka series now. Secondly, and we've said this on our show, I don't think any amount of rotation was going to get away from the fact that Akshay Patel and Ashwin were going to cause them a lot of problems. There's a lot of guys in that England team who average between sort of 30 and 35. And you're not, even if you replace Butler, even if you bring Butler in for like Bairstow or something like that, you're not bringing in the world's best batter. You're bringing in a guy who's obviously found his feet in Test cricket and like probably averages 40 or something like that. But he's not Don Bradman. So I think to some extent, people are pinning the blame for the series on this rotation thing when actually England were just going to lose anyway.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, it's not. I mentioned the rotation. It's not specifically the rotation. I think it's for me growing up watching Indian cricket, say in the 2000s and the early 2010s. Limited overs cricket was the pinnacle. Like you wanted to play for the 50 over side. You wanted to win a World Cup. And it always felt like, again, maybe this is just qualitative, but it always felt like England and to an extent Australia, maybe South Africa, prioritized Test cricket. Today, it feels like India is prioritizing Test cricket and let's call it the IPL and other franchises. But but it feels very clearly that like an 18, 20-year-old English cricketer who's done well coming out of high school, playing college, and making the domestic circuit feels like his priority would be white ball cricket. And you tell me if you disagree. Whereas a young Indian kid, even a Prithvi Shaw, these guys, they want to play red ball cricket. And I'm not saying one is good or bad. I'm just saying it seems like a pretty noticeable difference between the approaches. That was my key
So
point.
I think that probably England do prioritise red ball cricket, but they prioritise winning white ball trophies. And I think we're in the run up to a T20 World Cup.
Sure.
You're going to get loads of guys you've got an opportunity to play half your team in the IPL and get some experience there. You've got for these 5 T20s. That's the ideal preparation, is to play the second best team in the world 5 times in the environment that you're going to play the World Cup. And I think like probably it's just the reality of the situation you're in at the moment in terms of COVID. Like it's difficult to send Joss Butler on a 6-month cricket tour in this day and age. There's too people in English cricket, I think, are too aware now that is too much to inflict upon a player, and I think that's probably the right thing. So I do think I think test is still king in England. It's just that the circumstances of this particular last 6 weeks probably make that blurred that line a little bit. Don't you agree, Ross? Or?
I'm just going to say quickly, I would agree to disagree there, because I mean, I think you have a world-class spinner in Adil Rashid, and I think there's a whole different story there. But I mean, if he was playing the 4 tests, it could have been a very different story. So that's my final thought there.
So I think on the England front and Test cricket front, I think we need to see where kind of the money is for ECB as well. Like when England won the World Cup, the country was buzzing in the world. Like cricket couldn't have been. There was as big as cricket has been since the 2005 Ashes, and I think the ECB are sitting there going, right, we're spending a load of money on this new competition, the 100. We've got a T20 competition, World Cup coming up in 2021 and 2022. We need to get people back playing the sport, and putting Test cricket on is great. And we got it on Channel 4, but I think England's selection there, where their superstars are, it's in front of more people are watching it. And I think there is just that bit of going, we are going to go for another World Cup, and Morgan is clearly such a personality anyway, and him combined with Ashley Giles is sitting there going, we want to create a bit of a white ball dynasty, and India have the opportunity to create a Test match dynasty. And I think it's just a really exciting point for cricket at the moment.
Yeah.
But Morgan's not English, is he?
Oh, but well, either was Strauss, or we had so many, Kevin Peterson. You know, and that's the great thing about England.
We can play 4 overseas players. No other team can do that.
It's the IPL model. Love it.
We've taken a little bit of an unexpected tangent there. So just to bring us back to the last couple of things we want to talk about, we've got a few Twitter questions. But first of all, Ross, what does Kohli have against Mumbai Indian players? Where's Rohit? Where's Sky? And where's Ishan Kishan? They're going to be in the next team, surely.
Well, it probably just comes from the fact that Kohli doesn't stand a chance of winning the IPL again in IPL 20. Just saw Mumbai Indians smash them to bits again. I think it can't just be Kohli picking the side, is my bit. There is a select panel, and there is that bit where I think they just need that wake-up call. And by the sounds of it, you want to hear that this series will be the wake-up call, because there could be some unbelievably good cricket at that World Cup. And hopefully we'll see that come to the fruition. My view is that Rohit Sharma should be the captain of this T20 side, not Virat Kohli. But I'm probably going to get shouted at again in the YouTube comments for that.
Right. We'll run through these Twitter questions. So if we can keep our answers brief, fellas, so it doesn't end up being like a 3-hour long show. We got a question in from Mask0101. Ross, you might be best to answer this. Is this England's first choice World Cup T20 team, or will there be any changes?
I think that Sam Curran position is probably the one that is the rotation bit. If they think they want to go with another spinner, that's where Moeen Ali will probably come in. And I think we just the rest though looks pretty set. And I think Jason Roy within the runs, that position was the one that was a bit of a question mark, but it's not going to be if he hits runs throughout this tour.
Ashwin, did the Indian selectors borrow Ed Smith's wheel of selection for tonight's game?
I'd like to blame Ed Smith a little. I think this has just been true for us in T20s for so long, and we've done better than we should have. And so the numbers and the number of wins we've gotten don't accurately represent the poor selection. So I want to be optimistic. I'm not optimistic enough we'll change by the end of the 5 games. We're going to keep doing the same. We'll probably win 2 off the back of spectacular individual performances and then forget about how poor the selection was. So, yeah.
Last one then. I think we can also just sort of vote on this one, basically. Chirag says, it's a tough one to take, but should Virat Kohli be sacked as England captain and possibly dropped from T20s? Ross, so you can go first.
Yeah, he should concentrate on his T20 average, as all of our YouTube fans will say. But as I said, Rohit Sharma should be captain this side.
But Kohli in the team?
Yes, Kohli's in the team. Yeah,
cool. And Ashwin, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to get hate for this too, but I would agree with that. I don't think sacked. I think he should step down, choose to focus on being Test match captain and a batsman across all 3 formats. I don't even think he should be captaining his IPL franchise. I think he's a guaranteed batsman for me in the side, but not a captain.
I'd probably agree with that. As I said sort of earlier, he's the Kohli of the Kohlis, or the best Kohli of the Kohlis. And yeah, keep him going. Right, last thing then, boys. Predictions for the next match. Ashwin, will India bounce back?
Yeah, I'm thinking they'll bounce back. I don't know how the series is going to end, but I think coming out of Sunday will be 1-1.
And Ross?
England are going to trounce on Sunday.
Well, I said 4-1 before the series, and there was a little bit of showmanship in that. You two both said 3-2, but yeah, it could actually be 4-1 here. So I'm going to go England as well. We're going to sign off in a second. Ashwin, I don't think we said at the beginning, where can people find you and your podcast online?
Yeah, thanks. So, I'm one of the hosts of the Edges and Sledges cricket podcast. If you don't listen to us already, what are you waiting for? You can find us on all the platforms. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, everything. Just search Edges and Sledges. And then on social media, we're at One Tip, One Hand. So the number 1, TIP, number 1 hand, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of the above. Check us out. We're not dissimilar to these fantastic young lads we're 3 guys who host the show. And we talk about the same things, all things cricket, but from an Indian perspective. So definitely check us out. And thanks for having me on the show today, gents.
No worries.
Thanks for coming on. I've got one question from me. There was a bit of angst between Johnny Bairstow and Washington Sundar, where Johnny Bairstow tried to get out of the way, and this week Kieran Pollard got a batsman dismissed for obstructing the field. So who would win in that fight? Would it be the angry red-haired hippo, or would it be the long-levered Aggie Big Bird out of Sesame Street that is Washington Sundar? Who are you going to go for? My money's on Johnny Bairstow.
I would never bet against Bairstow in a fight. Let's put that there. I don't care who's on the other side. I'm not betting against him in a fight.
I think reach is key.
Yeah.
So, I think Washington Sundar just, like in cartoons when the guy has his hand on someone's forehead and they're like windmilling away. I can imagine it going down a little bit like that. Anyway, make sure you hit like and subscribe. And we're going to say goodbye. We'll be back on Sunday, I think, won't we, for a recap of the second T20.
Thanks for listening.